Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
Folks, welcome back to the I Thought You'd Like to Know show. This is your host, Pat Flynn, and we are going to talk about morality and health. Do you have a moral obligation to be healthy? Do you have a moral obligation to be fit? Or at least, do you have a moral obligation to try to be healthy and to try to be fit? And if so, what are some things we can do to be healthier, happier, fitter, more productive, and so on? So the second part of that question, or the second question, I should say, probably implies the answer to the first. I obviously do think that we have some type of moral obligation to at least try to be healthy and fit. So I'd like to establish that argument in tonight's conversation. So this should be interesting. This should be fun. We will get to dabble a bit in moral philosophy, and then we'll talk health and fitness, nutrition, exercise, that sort of thing. So we'll kind of blend the philosophical with the utterly practical. And that's how it should be, right? Philosophy should be, right? Philosophy should be practical. For no short number of reasons, philosophy has gotten a bad reputation of just being a bunch of theoretical nonsense, as people will sometimes condemn it as. But this is just bad philosophy. Good philosophy should be utterly accessible and practical and something that you can use in your daily life. That's what good philosophy is supposed to do and should do. And that's one way that you can tell good philosophy from bad philosophy is, can I use this? Does this actually help me answer any significant questions in life? If not, then time to read another philosopher. Time to probably listen to somebody else. And my favorite philosophers, Aristotle, Aquinas, just to name two of them, they gave not only great answers to life's biggest and hardest questions, but they also gave you something to do, and final causality, that things have teleology to them, that things they have purposes, they have ends of which they are oriented towards or are pointing at. For example, a final cause of the heart is to pump blood. The final cause of a saw is to saw. That's a famous Aristotelian saying, is a saw is most a saw when it's sawing, right? That is what a saw is for. So it is good for a saw to be sawing, for example. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So the first time that I had this conversation, not the first time, but one of the more significant times that I had this conversation was somebody asked me if I felt that people had a moral obligation to be healthy or fit. It was an email from somebody who followed my fitness stuff online, from a professor at Villanova, an ethics professor named Peter Koch, who we have since become very good. If people had a moral obligation to be healthy or fit, it was an email from somebody who followed my fitness stuff online, from a professor at Villanova, an ethics professor named Peter Koch, who we have since become very good friends. So hello, Peter, if you happen to be listening. And he asked me this very question. He said, do you think that people have a moral obligation to be healthy and fit? And I gave an answer from an Aristotelian Thomistic point of view, and he very much enjoyed that, and I very much enjoyed that he enjoyed that. And of course, whenever you agree with somebody very strongly, you're like, let's be best friends, and that's something like what happened. So I would like to briefly summarize the case that I made for health and fitness being something of a moral obligation, even if not an ultimate moral obligation. I do think we have some moral obligation to pursue these things. I do not want to go too deep into the philosophy of objective morality and how objective morality requires a transcendent ontological foundation, which can only be found, of course, in God. So I defended objective morality and also use that as an argument for God's existence. So if you want a much more in-depth conversation about morality, I will refer you to past episodes on those. This one is just going to be kind of a rough and ready. Here's how we can think about this to give ourselves the justification and the warrant for eating a little bit healthier and exercising on a more regular basis, perhaps. And then we can get into the fun stuff, which is how should we be eating? How do we eat healthier? How should we be exercising? What exercises should we do? So I'll get to play my fitness card a little bit here, which if many of you know my background, well, I have a number of backgrounds. My formal backgrounds are in writing and music. And then fitness as a skill came a little bit later in life. It's how I kind of paid my way through college. My background, well, I have a number of backgrounds. My formal backgrounds are in writing and music. And then fitness as a skill came a little bit later in life. It's how I kind of paid my way through college, being a personal trainer, and then that evolved into a business, and so on and so forth. So, who cares? My history, totally irrelevant. Let's focus on the task at hand. So, do you have a moral obligation to be fit? Well, if you're coming from an Aristotelian Thomistic point of view, and you subscribe to things having final causes, to things having a reason for their being, to being pointed at something, having a teleology, so to speak, then to find out what a thing really is, you kind of have to ask or answer 4 questions about it, right? What is its efficient cause? What is its material cause? What is its formal cause? And what is its final? Its material cause is what is it made of. Its formal cause is like what is its shape. Essentially, that's not the best way to put it, but we can come back to that. Right. For example, the formal cause of a ball would be like roundness and bounciness and things like that. And then its final cause would be, well, what is it for exactly? And when you can answer these questions and answer them well, then you will have a pretty good understanding of what a thing actually is. So we're taking the example of a ball. Its efficient cause might be some ball factory, right? A basketball, let's say, comes from like the Wilson ball factory. Its material cause is rubber or whatever it's made out of. Its formal cause is roundness, bounciness, and so on and so forth. And its final cause is for the actual activity of basketball. It is meant to be thrown into a hoop. That is what it is for. So a basketball is most a basketball when somebody is using it to play basketball. Right? It's a simple way to understand it. Or a basketball when somebody is using it to play basketball. Right? It's a simple way to understand it. Or another famous Aristotelianism, a saw is most a saw when it's sawing. Like it is good for a saw to be sawing because that is what a saw is supposed to do. It would be bad for a saw to be doing things that frustrate its final cause, right? And this is how we start to develop an idea of morality in sort of the Aristotelian and Thomistic natural law sense. When we understand a thing's final cause or what it's for, we can say that things that tend to frustrate its final cause, right, are bad for that thing, and depending on what that thing is, the fact that something is bad for it may or may not be immoral. It depends if that thing is a moral agent. But certainly for humans, we can say that certain bad things are immoral because humans are moral agents. We have rationality. How Aristotle defines humans. We are rational animals. And Aquinas built upon this, but he more or less accepted this. And so we use our rationality to pursue certain goods. And I'm going to kind of leap from Aristotle to Aquinas here because I think Aquinas really solidified it. And of course, there are we use our rationality to seek happiness, ultimately. Imperfect happiness here on earth, and then, of course, perfect happiness when we get to heaven. So our final cause, our ultimate final cause, is to achieve perfect happiness in communion with God. But there are a lot of proximate goods or final causes that can help us or that we can enjoy along the way. So to kind of get a deeper understanding of this, we really by happiness, because all humans are seeking happiness, right? Ultimately, this is kind of like a form of psychological egoism before psychological egoism became a thing, in the sense that anything that we do, when you really boil it down, ultimately comes to us trying to fulfill our own happiness. And so much of virtue ethics and natural law is trying to figure out what things we should do that will contribute to our flourishing, that will increase our overall well-being, eudaimonia, as Aristotle often called it. So you can think of developing virtues, of being a morally good person, as a sort of blueprint for optimal human flourishing. As like, if you want to really achieve happiness, or at least imperfect happiness, as Aquinas called it, because you'll never achieve perfect happiness here on earth, right? That's for the next life. But here on earth, having a little trouble speaking. It's a weird time in the afternoon. That should be my nap time. But here on earth, we can achieve imperfect happiness by following the moral law, the natural law, by developing certain virtues. And to the extent that we develop these virtues, and we desire the things that are really good for us, we will achieve a much greater amount of human flourishing. So what is this ultimately saying? Well, it's ultimately saying is you shouldn't just seek whatever you desire. There are certain things that you should desire, and you should desire what is really good for you. Now, what I like about virtue ethics and natural law theory, or the Aristotelian Thomistic view of morality, is that it bridges the is-ought gap. Well, first off, it does it because all of this stems from God, which takes care of that problem. But it also bridges the is-ought gap because it's when you understand what is really good for you, then you understand what it means, why you should pursue something. Right, and that's essentially what it's saying, is the development of these virtues, the perfection of certain powers, is what is really good for us. This is what humans are for. This is a final cause. Now, all of this, of course, should be oriented and directed to the ultimate final cause, which is God. But there's a lot of things here on earth that can help us along the way and that are good in themselves. Just because God is the ultimate good doesn't mean there can't be a lot of proximate goods or other good things that we can enjoy. And to Aquinas, this is a source of happiness, because happiness would be something like engaging in and enjoying genuinely good activities, right? Now what does that mean? And look, I'm trying to condense like a lot of philosophy in a short time here, so I'm sorry if I'm losing anybody, but we're gonna get to the crux of the argument here soon. But this should all be very practical and useful stuff. But to engage in and enjoy a genuinely good activity, that activity needs to be morally beneficial. It needs to be helpful to people in some way, or it at least needs to be morally neutral. Like, it can't be harming people or damaging in any way. And you also want to be engaging in it with good intentions, right? You're doing it from properly ordered motives. These are at least the two like minimum requirements to say that you're engaging in and enjoying a genuinely good activity. So what we should do is we should attempt to engage in and enjoy a lot of genuinely good activities, because this will increase our happiness, our human flourishing. And we can try to determine what a lot of these genuinely good activities are through the virtue of prudence, right? So when it comes to Aquinas, prudence is the virtue that is the chariot for all other virtues. It helps us to determine what other virtues to develop, what degree they should be developed in, and something I learned from my friend Dr. Kevin Vost is that you can think about prudence as having three faces: the past, the present, and the future. So the idea of prudence is you should use experience and wisdom from the past to make a decision in the present for a better outcome in the future. All right, that's why prudence is the chariot virtue. All other virtues, the cardinal virtues being prudence, temperance, fortitude, and justice, and then the theological virtues, the ones that are gifted to us by God, would be faith, hope, and love, and or charity, as it is sometimes called. So, focusing on the cardinal virtues, we do have a moral obligation to develop these virtues. Because these are the things that are really good for us. Obviously God wants us to do it too, but these are the things that will cause us to flourish. They will help to, prudence, for example, will help us to determine what the right action to take is in various circumstances. So what's great about this moral theory is that it doesn't make itself a form of absolutism, okay? Because we know that moral absolutism is just, it's really tough to defend. For example, an example would be a moral theory that says lying is always wrong no matter what. But then, what if you're lying to protect? It says lying is always wrong no matter what. But then, what if you're lying to protect an innocent child from a murderer who's knocking at your door? Our deepest intuitions in moral sense would say, no, we should lie to protect that child. And prudence, and if we have prudence would tell us that that is the right thing to do as well. So what's great about this moral theory, something like virtue ethics and natural law theory, is it attaches to objective morality, which comes from God, but it allows for a certain degree of flexibility and relativism, and small r relativism, not strong moral relativism. We're still affirming that objective moral values and duties exist, but that context also plays an important role. And I've always been attracted to this moral theory. I think it just makes sense, right? It matches our moral intuitions. It's flexible enough to accommodate the vast array of contexts and situations in which we face various moral dilemmas. So let's go all the way back now. So my friend Peter asks, do we have a moral obligation to be fit? And I would say yes, we do, because our health, our bodies are oriented towards seeking of knowing and making and doing good things. Right. These are the three things that Aristotle helped us to define as kind of part of our final cause: knowing and making and doing good things. Now, the ultimate thing that we want to know is God, but there's a lot of other things that we can know and do and make that would fall under those categories of a genuinely good activity. Fitness and health are obviously one of these. These are certain potentialities that, to the extent that we're able to actualize them, can really help everything else. So for example, if nothing else, if just eating healthy and exercising on a regular basis helps us to live longer, then we have more potential to learn about and seek communion with God here on earth, and also to develop the other virtues, and to engage into theological virtues as well. So we're just increasing for other genuinely good activities by keeping ourselves healthy and fit, as opposed to, but you can take it the other way, right? If we were to actively sabotage our health, eat very unhealthy, become completely sedentary, then we would be actively frustrating our final cause to know and make and do good things. Because we would eventually become quite overweight, perhaps even disabled, riddled with disease, all sorts of problems that obviously and sadly have become far too obvious from living an unhealthy lifestyle. But to the extent that we do maintain a healthy lifestyle, and then we work within our teleology of trying to keep things properly ordered, so to speak. I'm not saying that you should be obsessive about health and fitness, and I think there's an objection to be made there. For example, if you become so obsessed with your health and so obsessed with fitness that becomes your ultimate cause, that you are forgetting about all the other virtues, you are forgetting about your moral obligation to love other people, to be a charitable person because you're just so obsessed with lifting weights or running or the way you look, then that is a vice. That is no longer a virtue. So yes, we do have a moral obligation to find that golden mean, as Aristotle called it. And the golden mean, for example, something like courage, is something that is in between a behavior or an action that could be used to the extreme, or that is utterly deficient. So I say courage because courage is in between recklessness on one hand and cowardice on another. Obviously, being a coward, we can either be in a complete deficit, which would be, again, utterly sedentary, very overweight, riddled with health problems. That's not good. That's frustrating a lot of our final causes, a lot of our teleology. It's just getting in the way of our human flourishing. So it's a bad thing. Arguably, it's an immoral thing. On the other hand, we could become so absorbed by just, trying to be the fittest person in the world, whatever that means, that this becomes, fitness becomes a religion, so to speak. And then that would be in the excess. So that would be a vice as well. That would be bad, and that would be immoral as well. But to the extent that we can maintain that healthy equilibrium, that golden mean, then we are engaging in and enjoying a genuinely good activity. So that was a very windy and I'm kind of all over the place. I'm sorry, doing this off the cuff, no notes, that golden mean, then we are engaging in and enjoying a genuinely good activity. So that was a very windy and I'm kind of all over the place. I'm sorry, doing this off the cuff, no notes, but I appreciate you entertaining my argument from virtue ethics and natural law for why you should be healthy and fit. Here's the short of it, ready? Humans have final causes. We are meant to know, do, and make good things. Anything that frustrates that final cause is bad, arguably immoral. Anything that promotes that final cause is good and arguably moral. Part of our final cause is engaging in and enjoying genuinely good activities that have a positive or beneficial effect to us and those around us. But are also done with the right intentions or the right mindset. So, for example, when it comes to fitness and health, I should engage in that because I know that this is going to make me a strong leader. Reasons, because that is a giving reason. And I should try to align being an inspiration to other people and helping other people with fulfilling my own happiness. That would be a good effect and done for good reasons. Now, if I was engaging in health and fitness because I just want to look better than my neighbor or because I want to be able to beat somebody up I don't like, this would be perhaps a neutral effect or even a bad effect, and it would be done for selfish, very wrong reasons. I'm trying to fulfill my happiness in a way that ultimately will not fulfill my happiness. So we can see how that works. No matter what, we're always trying to pursue happiness. We can't get away from that. But the idea here, to get morality right, we should do the things that will actually make us happier, even if it's just imperfectly happier. But will fulfill us on some level and continue to fill us to the extent that we continue to engage in those genuinely good activities. So that's what I'm getting at, and that's the way to really look at health and fitness. So let's switch gears now and maybe talk a little bit about the practical side. Maybe you are somebody who is already living in a healthy lifestyle. You watch what you eat, you exercise on a regular basis. Maybe you just want a few ideas of ways to optimize things, or maybe you're somebody who has had trouble getting started with healthy eating or exercising. So I'm going to make no assumptions. This is the first time that I've talked about fitness and health on the I Thought You'd Like to Know show. So we're going to start from the ground floor. And what I would like to do is just kind of build out my general approach or framework for being a healthy and fit person. I think this is a very reasonable framework. It focuses on a lot of principles that can be easily modified and tailored to any situation. So I'm going to have a sip of my water and then then we'll get into it. We'll start with the fitness side, and then we'll talk about the nutrition side. Now, I'm a basics kind of person. I like keeping things as simple as I can. Simple is good. Simple is what we need. So many people, and this is not just true in fitness, but it's especially true in fitness, is they just hop from diet plan to diet plan without ever understanding the principles that need to be adhered to for long-term success. So let's try and get into some of these. So when I talk about fitness, I like to actually formulate a pyramid. So you can kind of think of the food pyramid, which the original food pyramid, by the way, throw that thing into the trash. I'm pretty sure even the government threw that thing into the trash at this point. So if you know if the government threw something away, it must be really, really bad. But it should have been thrown away even when it was first presented. But I want you just to imagine a pyramid like the food pyramid, and we're going to try and formulate an approach to exercise around this that will help us strike that golden mean, right? And again, your motivations and your intentions matter. You get into fitness for the right reasons. I can tell you, as somebody who started in fitness for the wrong reasons, those reasons will fizzle out very quickly. They will not fulfill you. It isn't until you do it for the right reasons. Do it because you want to inspire and help other people, because you want to be there for your children, for your grandchildren, and you want to feel better. You deserve to feel better. Don't do it for the and again, hands up, I'm guilty here. When I first started getting into fitness as a teenager, I just wanted to look better than people. That's it, straight up. But you know what? There's always going to be somebody out there that looks better, that can lift more weights. That's a losing game. So you need to try and make your motivations a little bit more outward focused. Who can I help? Who am I serving? Of course, there's nothing wrong with wanting to feel and look better. Nothing wrong with that. But the second that is your only motivation, the second that you are almost vindictive with wanting to get healthy or fit, it's just never going to last. It's never going to pull you through, and it's certainly never going to fulfill you. So assuming that you get your motivations right, let's talk about how to build a reasonable, sensible, and effective exercise program. So we said imagine a pyramid, right? Then at the bottom of the pyramid, okay. Remember at the bottom of a food pyramid, this is the stuff you want to have like the most of. Well, what I put at the bottom of a fitness pyramid are low-level movement activities such as walking. Walking and mobility work are the foundations of the fitness pyramid. Let me explain what I mean by that. These are low-level activities that you could do very frequently throughout the day, and also for a long duration. And the two best examples here are walking or brisk walking, which is an amazing form of exercise, something that is accessible to pretty much everybody right at the start also. And it's one of those things that no matter how advanced you get, no matter how strong you get, no matter how well conditioned you get, you will always benefit from just going for a walk, especially a brisk walk. And then other mobility work too, taking care of the joints, working on flexibility training and things like that. Now, mobility and flexibility are actually a little bit different. Mobility means strength through normal range of motion. Flexibility typically means just being able to access certain ranges of motion, sometimes ranges of motion that extend beyond the quote-unquote normal healthy range. So when I say mobility work, I mean there's a lot of different exercises that could be considered mobility work. So we can get into that a little bit more later, but the fundamental thing I want you to think about here is the bottom of the pyramid is like your broccoli, right? This is the stuff that the more you can have of it, the better. Like load up on the walking, the brisk walking. Now, it pretty much anything of that intensity can fit in here. Gardening is fine. Some light recreational sports, anything that isn't like too intense. You should be able to at least maintain a conversation while you're doing it, but you're moving. You're not sitting still. You're actively moving, and you're not moving at a snail's pace either. You're doing some more. So when people say, "Well, how fast is a brisk walk?" and I say, "Well, just imagine that somebody kind of creepy was following you, but you don't want to make a scene." That's the pace for a brisk walk. Okay. Now, ideally, we should do whatever is at the bottom of the pyramid every day. And if we can do it for at least 30 minutes, that's awesome. And it can be cumulative. Maybe you don't walk for 30 minutes at a time, but you do 10 minutes here, 5 minutes there, 2 minutes here. Now, if you can set aside a block of 30 minutes, so it's really productive with this too, you can turn it into a walking meditation, a walking prayer session. A lot of times what I like to do is walk and pray the rosary. So it's Mr. Efficiency, right? We're getting the spiritual practice in with the physical exercise. You're getting outside, you're getting your vitamin D. So I would encourage that if you can. I think a walking rosary. We did a group activity in my area with my church not too long ago, where we walked the grounds of a local retreat house, for about an hour and just prayed the rosary. It was amazing. Highly recommend that. Now, of course, you could just listen to a podcast or something too, but that's up to you. The key is let's just get started. Okay, so in the middle of the pyramid, we would have here I like to put strength training. Good old-fashioned strength training, working against progressive resistance. Now, the middle of the pyramid, we would have here I like to put strength training. Good old-fashioned strength training, working against progressive resistance. Now, this could mean weightlifting, barbells, kettlebells, but it could also be done with your own body weight. So again, good old-fashioned, old-school calisthenics, right? Push-ups, pull-ups, bodyweight squats. The key is that you are working against some type of progressive overload. You are actively trying to increase your limit strength or your absolute strength. Now, for strength training, I would recommend that people do this somewhere between 2 to 5 days per week. Now, that might seem like a very wide range, but we're talking to a very wide audience. So depending how often you train will depend very much on how far along in the process you are. Are you just beginning? Are you a veteran? Are you younger? Are you older? So I can't give too many specifics because that's going to depend on the person, but generally somewhere between 2 to 5 days a week of strength training. And these sessions should be anywhere between 30 minutes to 60 minutes. You really don't need and probably don't want to push much past an hour when it comes to strength training. And what you want to do here, aside from working against some type of resistance, meaning you really are trying to force your body to get stronger, is you want to focus on the big fundamental movements. You want to focus on things like pushing, pulling, hinging, squatting, carrying, and twisting. I'll say it again: pushing, pulling, hinging, squatting, carrying, and twisting. So pushing could be things like push-ups, dips, military press, bench press, that sort of thing. Pulling could be pull-ups, chin-ups, bent-over rows, single arm rows, TRX rows, things, weight, single leg deadlifts, squatting, all squatting variations, front squats, back squats, Bulgarian split squats, lunges I would throw in there. And then carrying, things like farmer's carries, waiter's carries. These are some unconventional exercises, but very, very effective. And then twisting for rotation too, Russian twists, landmine twists, windshield wipers. By the way, if you're like, what are all these exercises? If you have no idea what these exercises are, just Google Pat Flynn kettlebell or YouTube Pat Flynn kettlebell. My YouTube channel will pop right up. I have all these exercises and tutorials on there to help you get started. So don't worry if you feel overwhelmed. I have tons of starting material that you can use to really get a move on with some of this stuff. So again, 2 to 5 days a week where you will engage in these full body fundamental exercises, just really trying to get stronger. Maybe you start with something simple like 5 sets of 5 reps. I don't want to get, again, too specific with the sets and reps, and I don't want to get, again, too specific with the sets and reps. It's the principles I'm trying to outline now. How you want to apply it on the individual level will, again, depend on many things, including how much time you have, how long you've been training for, your age, and something like that. But again, just to get started, somewhere between 2 to 5 days a week of good old-fashioned strength training, focusing on the fundamental human movements, is the way to go. Now, at the very top of the pyramid, which would be the dessert portion, I would have metabolic conditioning. And this is the very high-intensity, sweaty stuff that tends to leave you very out of breath, right? Some people might call it high intensity interval training. Is one form of metabolic conditioning. It isn't the only one. And this I typically recommend anywhere between 1 to 3 days a week. And these sessions should be shorter. Anywhere between 15 to 30 minutes is more than enough, because these are the ones where you just go in and it's just pedal to the metal. You are really trying to hit metal. You are really trying to hit this hard and totally gas yourself. So running sprints would be a good example of this. Doing circuit training would be another example. Or my favorite, kettlebell complexes. So if you have no idea what kettlebell complexes are, again, I will just reference you to my YouTube channel. Just Google Pat Flynn kettlebells. should pop right up, and you'll get a very quick introduction to not only kettlebell exercises but metabolic conditioning with them as well. What's great about metabolic conditioning is it really does sort of stoke the metabolic furnace, so to speak. It creates a lot of EPOC, or exercise post-oxygen consumption, that helps you to burn calories at an increased rate even after you've left the gym, even after you're done exercising. Strength training does that as well, but metabolic conditioning is particularly effective for that type of thing. So this is where a little bit goes a long way. This is like the bourbon to the sauce of a good training program. A little bit of bourbon makes a sauce spectacular. Too much and you ruin the sauce. So again, somewhere between 1 to 3 days a week. So let's review the pyramid one more time. At the bottom we have just walking. Just keep it simple. 30 to 60 minutes a day. Do it every day. At the middle of the pyramid we have strength training. Somewhere between 2 to 5 days a week, 30 to 60 minutes a session. And at the top of the pyramid, we have metabolic conditioning. Again, 15 to 30 minutes, 1 to 3 times a week, really trying to hit it hard and push the intensity. If you follow this framework, you will be very fit. There's no doubt about it. And you will also find something that can be absolutely sustained and is sustainable, if that isn't overly redundant. And hopefully enjoyable too. It allows for enough variety, but you're going to get stronger. You'll put on hopefully some dense functional muscle. You'll be very well conditioned. You'll be focusing on mobility as well. You'll have reason to get outside and walk and socialize and all these good things. So I think that this is a really balanced. I've been using this framework for years and years and years. I've had thousands upon thousands of people have tremendous success with this type of approach to exercise. So I call this my minimalist training pyramid. And I have posts about this on my site if you head over to chroniclesofstrength.com. And I've talked about this on my podcast, The Pat Flynn Show, before. But again, just trying to get some rough and ready, samples out to you. So water time, water break. Okay, so let's talk about eating. This is always the big one, isn't it? Nutrition, because the saying is you can't out-exercise a bad diet, and to the extent that is largely true. Mostly, I would say, well, why would you want to, right? You're just trying to drive with the e-brake on. If you're not trying to clean up the diet and you're trying to lose weight through exercise alone, at most you're just never going to be as effective or as efficient as you can be. So, again, you owe it to yourself. You ought to do what is really good for you. And what is really good for you is, again, getting in shape, taking exercise on a regular basis, but also being mindful of what you eat, not only the quality, but the quantity as well. So it is important when it comes to nutrition to understand that quality and quantity both matter. What you eat often determines how much you eat, and how much you eat absolutely has a bearing on your weight. Calories are important, but they are often determined by the quality of the foods you eat. It's obviously a lot easier to overconsume hyper-palatable foods, Oreos, ice cream, pizza, burgers, fries, than it is a bowl of steamed broccoli and garlic. These things are very obvious, but for some reason, especially in the nutrition world, which I spend a lot of time in, there's kind of these two camps that people fall in. One camp says, doesn't matter how much you eat so long as you're eating the right thing. In both of these, but neither I think is adequate to be called the truth in itself. I think the truth is something like, well, how about instead of either or, we just think both and. Obviously, what you eat has a bearing on how much you eat of it, so we should consider both. Now, as far as specific diets, people can and have had tremendous success with a very wide array of eating approaches and protocols. If you look at the blue zones around the world, of the healthiest people in the world who tend to live the longest amount of time, their diets often vary wildly, but they do have certain common features and components. One is that they are all generally unprocessed and close to nature in some way or another. Now, some diets may have more fruits and vegetables and less animal meats, but other diets may have more animal meats and less fruits and fruits and vegetables. But again, most of, if not all of these blue zone diets of the way people eat, who tend to be the healthiest and live the longest, are focused on foods that are close to nature, that are minimally processed. So immediately this eliminates the standard American diet, right, of foods that are like maximally processed and very far from nature. So eating lean meats, right, or leaner meats doesn't mean you can't have fatty meat every now and then, but leaner cuts of meats, lots of vegetables, fresh fruit, healthy fats, nuts, seeds, extra virgin olive oil. These are the things that are really good for you. And again, to understand what really good for you means is to understand what you ought to eat or what you ought to do. Your moral obligation, if we're drawing this all through the Aristotelian Thomistic framework. It's like we should desire those things which are really good for us. This doesn't mean you can't have the occasional treat, because the occasional treat might be really good for you in another way. This is prudence, right? But the majority of the time, we want to be mindful of what we're eating and eat the foods that are really good for us. It will promote our human flourishing. So, there's a lot of frameworks you can use to achieve this, but some basic ones, a basic Mediterranean type of diet framework would be a decent one. The paleo diet was very popular. I think the paleo diet cuts certain things out that don't necessarily need to be cut out, but it isn't the end of the world if you cut those things out anyway. So, for example, the paleo diet excludes a lot of grains and legumes like oats and beans, and I think oats and beans can and often are a great component to a healthy diet. So if you're looking for specific tactics, then again, something like the Mediterranean diet I think is a very good framework. But if you just focus on foods that are close to nature, and relatively unprocessed, I think you're going to have a lot of success. Now, I would like to offer a very specific strategy to help people get started that I've been using for years. And this is something that is very well researched and that I've had tremendous success coaching people through as well. And that's just the use of strategic meal replacements or controlled fasting. And the idea here is, maybe for one meal starting out, maybe for two meals, you replace what you would normally have with a protein and vegetable rich shake. So take breakfast, for example. Instead of the bowl of cereal, instead of the pancakes or whatever the unhealthy thing is, just have a protein shake with some high-quality protein, like a whey protein powder, and then some fresh fruits. I love mixed berries. Maybe throw in a little spinach. You're not even going to taste it. Maybe a little bit of ice, half a banana, a little bit of nut butter if you want. Mix that up. There's your breakfast. And you might be thinking, well, why don't I just make an omelet or have a healthier breakfast that I can cook? And there's actually a pretty good reason for this. A lot of the times when people don't stick to a healthy diet, it isn't because they don't know what they should be eating. It's because they just don't think it's very convenient or practical. So, I mean, part of the reason people eat so much fast food, aside from it's hyper palatable, is that it's easy. It's very accessible. It's quick. Okay, you don't have to cook things. You don't have to do dishes. You can just get it handed to you out of a window and you're on your way. So I think when it comes to nutrition, and this is true for exercise too, we want to make sure that we are making things as practical and as accessible and as convenient as possible. So if you just get a little blender, get a magic bullet, and then, just make yourself protein shakes, replace breakfast with a protein shake. You could replace lunch. You could do both with a protein shake. So one thing I like to do is swapping out 1 or 2 meals a day with a protein shake, and then later in the day, dinner, for example, then you can cook a very healthy, wholesome meal for yourself and your family. Because dinner, you're winding down, you're probably not on the go as much. You can spend more time actually preparing food, eating with your family, and so on and so forth. So this is actually my way of eating. So what I do throughout the day is I'll usually have 2 or 3 protein shakes, and occasionally I might come home and fix a meal for lunch. But I'm on the go. I'm very busy. I'm doing a lot of things. So I'll have 2 or 3 protein shakes. These are very nutritionally dense, meaning we're getting fruits, we're getting vegetables, we're getting high protein. It is good for you. Yes, it's a shake, but it's still food. It's still very good for you. Sometimes people will object and say, well, shouldn't you eat whole foods instead? And it is whole foods. It's just blended up. And it's very convenient. It's very filling as well. It's very satiating. And it will also help to regulate your energy levels. So we're getting a little bit specific with the tactics here, but I want to leave you with something that you can use and benefit from. So I will typically have, maybe 2 to 3 protein shakes. I'll have my breakfast shake. Then maybe I'll have a shake a little bit later in the morning. Then I'll work out, and then then I will have some type of lunch. Or if I'm really in a hurry, I'll just do another shake. But usually I have like some type of a big salad or something for lunch. And then for dinner, my wife will just cook a normal healthy meal, some lean proteins, some vegetables. Maybe we'll have a starch like sweet potatoes or zucchini or squash or something like that, or potatoes or rice or wild rice. And then, maybe some fresh fruit or something like that for dessert. And that it has been my diet and has allowed me to stay very, very lean, but also have great energy throughout the day, to be very productive, and then focus on eating just whole foods that are relatively unprocessed and as close to nature as possible. Now, one other tactic that I think I might want to leave you with is one that you hear about in spirituality and in Catholicism from time to time as well, and that we use as a spiritual practice, but has a lot of health benefits as well. And I obviously don't think this is a coincidence. And that's fasting, right? Engaging in voluntary poverty with regards to food, of just not eating for a while, is the easiest way to think about it. And I originally got into fasting before I became a Catholic because I was so intrigued by the science behind it and seeing how effective fasting was, not only for weight loss, but for improving certain biomarkers as well. It's just a healthy thing to do. Not eating strategically is a healthy thing to do. Now, should everybody do it? Probably, but it should be modified according to strategically is a healthy thing to do. Now, should everybody do it? Probably, but it should be modified according to where you are at and what you need. So again, I'm not going to give a blanket prescription here and say everybody should fast for this long, this number of times a week or a month. I don't think that would be appropriate. But I think engaging in some type of intermittent fast can be a very effective way, not only for losing weight, but improving health as well. Not to mention, if you want to tie it into some type of spiritual component as well, of trying to build the virtues of temperance and fortitude. Sometimes say, temperance is fasting and fortitude is exercise, if you really want a practical way to practice those virtues. So, one way that you can practice fasting, this will be the last specific tip that I leave you with, but I think it's definitely accessible. And, once a week, you just take a break from eating. That's it. And the way this works is this would be a dinner to dinner fast. And the idea is if I have dinner tonight, Monday night, then I won't eat until dinner again the next night. Now you might think, whoa, that's way too long. I'll pass out. If it's way too long, then shorten it. Just skip breakfast to start, right? And then have your first meal at lunch. And then as you get used to it, as you get better, you can push it back further and further. So be progressive with it. If even that is too much, and just try and push breakfast back a little bit. Now, obviously, if you're diabetic or hypoglycemic or you have some other issues, get this cleared with your doctor first. As a matter of fact, get everything that I said on this episode cleared with your doctor first. I'm not a doctor. Don't like to pretend to be one on the radio. So get it all cleared by your doctor first. But after that, then you can start to build in some progressive intermittent fasting. It's a practice that I've been doing for years in various forms. There's a good, easy way to start is just once a week. Just see if you can engage in some form of abstinence from food. Again, it might just be skipping breakfast at first, maybe breakfast and lunch. If you can go from dinner to dinner, a full fast like that, a full intermittent fast, I think you're going to find it not only very useful for weight loss, because imagine that, hold all else equal and just take 1 full days of calories out, you're going to lose weight, no doubt about it. But it'll give you a chance to, form a new relationship with hunger, to really understand what hunger is like, an opportunity to learn to respond to hunger rather than react very emotionally or compulsively. Again, it can give you a total new relationship and hopefully control over your appetites, your physical appetites, not just your concupiscible appetites, not just your concupiscible appetites. So fasting has many great benefits for that. Psychological, physiological, spiritual. Now you have to do it with the right mindset, with the right intentions, and you want to be progressive about it. But I cannot recommend it enough. Now, I will say this before we wrap up. Fasting will not replace an otherwise terrible diet. Follow the other principles first. Get the diet cleaned up first, and then start to implement periods of intermittent fasting if you so choose. And do all this in conjunction with the exercise component as well. You don't need to separate the nutrition and exercise. They actually enhance one another. Getting your diet cleaned up while starting an exercise program, one reinforces the other. And not only are you going to see progress quicker, but your energy will be better, your motivation will be higher. So don't feel like you should start one and then do the other. I would say combine them, but do them both. Fasting you can do later, but do them both. Okay, so to reiterate a few points here, what have we've been all over the place tonight. Thanks for bearing with me. I hope this has been helpful. I really do. Hopefully you've got some good practical tips. Do we have a moral obligation to be fit? Well, I think we do. And to summarize, again, humans are rational animals. We are meant to know and do and make good things. And anything that frustrates our final cause of knowing and making and doing good things, and especially the ultimate cause of coming into a loving and saving relationship with God, is a bad thing. And for humans, it's an immoral thing. So just letting your health and fitness completely deteriorate is abusing the gift that God has given you. And that's, if nothing else, it's mildly insulting, and we shouldn't do it. But also, obsessing over health and fitness to the extent that that's your religion is not good either. That is a vice. So we want to find that healthy middle ground where we can build a temperance and fortitude, and we can use prudence to help us figure out how to eat healthier, how to exercise in a productive and efficacious way. And hopefully we've given you some really good ideas to get started on that in this episode. So thank you for tuning in. Please do be sure to subscribe every Monday night at 6 p.m. This is the I Thought You'd Like to Know show. I am Pat Flynn. You can catch me almost all the other days of the week over on my podcast, The Pat Flynn Show. So just Google The Pat Flynn Show on iTunes. I talk a lot about nutrition, fitness, spirituality, religion, Catholicism, business. It's a generalist podcast. We literally talk about everything, philosophy. It's a lot of fun. So you can join me over there, my website, Chronicles of Strength. Otherwise, we will catch you next Monday. And let me know how it goes. If you start putting some of these further assist you along. All right, folks. We'll catch you.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.